We have the honor of speaking with a national trainer of a youth suicide prevention program called Sources of Strength on this podcast. Timmy Foster is from Detroit, Michigan, and studied organizational communication and leadership at Central Michigan University. He joined Sources of Strength as a national trainer in 2020. Currently, Timmy lives in Washington, D.C.
I fall asleep under the trees. I follow where the current leads. Whispers in the woods, they call to me. Listen as the wind awakes the leaves.
Hey, you found it. Welcome to the Wellness Project Podcast. I am your host, Wilson, and you can reach me at the Wellness Project LLC at gmail.com. And let's get started. So what is the podcast, right? That's the big question. We're going to be doing a lot of things, very multifaceted. A little introduction. I have been in mental health, the field that is, for about 15 years. I have my bachelor's in psychology and a master's in clinical mental health counseling. Over the years, man, I've worked in a variety of mental health settings, whether it be in home, in the office, private practice, worked in clinical hospitals, schools, and a government agency at one point. So with that, I think I do have some professional insight into the world of mental health. What else are we going to do? We're going to be doing interviews, of course, all types of interviews, other professionals in the field, maybe some personal stories of folks in their journey with mental health. And I'd like to maybe look at some scholarly articles in a more in-depth way. So you can expect that and more. But, one of the many reasons why I started this podcast is just to talk more about the stigma around mental health. So stick with us, and I welcome you to the Wellness Project Podcast.
I'm a blinding light, I'm lost in the day, I'm a ghost in the night.
Big part of that is getting content. So if things like this, like us talking, will get better. But I don't really know, Timmy, what I want the format to be like. I think it's different because I'm not doing news talk. Like, I'm not going to be reading much from a script.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about current events unless they're related to mental health. But I think the longer music or the style of music kind of sets that therapeutic vibe to it that I kind of want my audience to have. But I don't know. People will tell me.
Yeah. For me as a listener, I was like, oh, is this song done?
Right.
But
right.
I'm a fast culture.
Yeah.
I need to know how many minutes the article is going to take me to read.
Okay.
Before I'm like willing to attempt to digest it.
Yeah. Very literal.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not a great reader.
Me neither.
So
I'm more on audio stuff now.
Yeah.
Obviously, but
and so like the podcast, it needs to sort of get me into a story soon enough.
Yeah. Do you listen to podcasts?
I try to.
Yeah.
I try to.
They're really long too.
They're really long.
They're really long.
Really long.
Yeah. So I'm thinking we're going to do like 20 minutes, get out, change the topic, and that'll be another whole episode.
Let's see what we do. I mean, if you're going to ask me for a 3-hour adult advisor training in 20 minutes.
No.
Schools like to do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. You have all day tomorrow.
Oh, no, I know. Yeah. Sometimes when, we'll get into it, when people ask for like what is sources, I just go into.
Yep.
And then I need 3 hours.
Right. Of course, which is great. You want to get started? So how this all sort of started was, I was approached by a local school district to look into suicide prevention programs. And Sources of Strength sort of popped up. There were a few others, but I really gravitated towards the hands-on, peer-led approach to Sources of Strength. And I was fortunate enough to sign up for this training that was 4 days long, and I loved
4 days on Zoom. How did you feel?
Yeah, I'm used to it. I do online school. I'm actually getting ready to do a 4-day pre-practicum, I guess you'd call it.
Okay.
All on Zoom. But aside from the content and the message behind Sources of Strength, let me just say, from a participant that went through it, they were like absolutely amazing at doing Zoom. Like they made it really interactive. They had games. They had breaks.
You know, I made those games.
Really?
Uh-huh. Most of them.
Well,
our team made those games.
Right.
Don't put that down. Yeah, I've created most of our virtual and physically distanced games.
okay. Well, can I tell you my ultimate favorite is?
Please. Oh my gosh.
My ultimate favorite, which I literally do this with friends. Like we just did it this past weekend. It's the 1, 2, 3 up looking one.
Oh, 1, 2, 3, look. Yeah. Wait, you played that virtually?
No, like I was hanging out with just some friends over the weekend, and we're like, hey, like let me show you this really fun game. And they're like, oh, really? And we're like, yeah, 1, 2, 3, and we look up, and they loved it.
Yeah, I can't take credit for our classic in-person games. Those were before me.
Right.
But 1, 2, 3, look is fun. Have you played where you can like save yourself?
No.
Oh,
there's a like alternative version to the game.
Yeah, one of our adult advisors, maybe he's out of Fort Collins, Denver, taught it to us. He was a trainer. Where that if you make eye contact, it's just when you're playing with smaller groups, we'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
When you're playing with smaller groups, it can like add a little laughter and a little bit of length to the game. When you make eye contact with someone, instead of you're both out, when you make eye contact with someone, whichever one of you clucks like a chicken first gets to save yourself. It's fun.
I could see that.
It's silly. We'll do it tomorrow.
It is.
We'll do it tomorrow.
So, like, are you guys open? Because, like, one of the questions I had is, like, are you open to new game suggestions if they have the right Sources of Strength feel to it?
All of them.
Okay.
All of them. Yes.
There's one that I heard about this weekend. I'll show you after this podcast.
Okay.
So, but
tell me about it later. We maybe don't want to record about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so into our game. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Love it. So give us your background. Like, how did you find Sources of Strength?
Me. I was working in retail banking sales.
Ooh, fun.
Oh, so fun. So well compensated though.
True.
My career history is in retail. Lost a friend to suicide. Sort of that triggered my own mental health journey. And after I recovered and really began to, and this wasn't until I'm 23.
Yeah.
I began to like consider my own mental wellness.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up really fortunate in lots of ways. And yet my sexual identity was something that I didn't explore in sort of what was the most healthy way, but my parents were just doing the best that they knew how. And my mental health and the systems and structures that I existed in really served me.
Yeah.
And so growing up, like when someone had anxiety, I was like, oh, you're weak.
Yeah.
Which is,
yeah.
That's
someone
not
was
true.
just like depressed and you're like, get over it.
Wow, you
very
seem
insensitive. Yeah.
What are those BetterHelp commercials? Like, just smile.
But, to be fair to you, like, it sounds like you had a pretty traditional, solid, good upbringing to that point. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm from really supportive family who were really desperate to find me a space that I belonged. And it wasn't until I cried myself off of like the third football field.
You're like, this is not for me.
Soccer, yeah. My parents were like, oh, put him in a fucking musical.
Yeah. See if he does good here.
And that shit works.
There you go. That's it though.
But so anyway, so I didn't really begin understanding mental health and wellness and like that growth that people need to practice their own wellness until I hit a really hard spot, which wasn't until I was 23.
That you lost your friend.
And a couple other like life events happened back to back that really started my own journey. And as I healed, I just had this passion and interest in working in and supporting the wellness space.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine founded a nonprofit in DC that stumbled on to Sources of Strength. And I began training like regionally in DC, Maryland, and Virginia.
Okay.
In a way that like a lot of our train the trainers do. We have folks who are certified to run our trainings without bringing in the national team.
Right.
And so I was doing that in DC while working in banking, and I just found myself like trying to sneak out of work to go volunteer.
Yeah.
And so finally sort of my personal life and my career journey sort of led themselves to me being like, hey, sources, I want to do this full time.
Yeah.
And so reached out to them, who I was already working with a couple of the folks. And
Right, because you were doing regional work, you're saying. So
yeah. So I was like a certified train the trainer, which we have those folks all around who like run trainings now and then sort of throughout the year. That's something that like you could do. You could get certified to not pay to bring us in and just run trainings throughout here, or in connection with Prevention First, or there's a whole big Ohio contract that.
How so there's so many questions to get into. Let's talk about how big Sources of Strength has gotten, and then get into the nuts and bolts of it.
I don't know that we have the metrics that would sound interesting.
It's throughout the country though, right? Like when we say national,
Nation.
like you
International.
Okay. So you guys will go.
Yeah. Our presence in Australia is small, but exists.
Okay.
We have a huge presence. We have a large presence in Canada. We did an entire Train the Trainer for Manitoba.
Wow.
Both K through 12. And our elementary model looks a lot different than our middle school and high school model. Our secondary model is the one you're familiar with. Our elementary is a lot different.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing that one next.
Oh, yeah.
In October.
Oh, it's good stuff.
It just sounds fun.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
And like the sooner we can begin teaching people, we're talking kids, but I mean people, how to regulate their own emotions, the better.
Right.
And if we're going to be an upstream model of suicide prevention, we are so interested in that. One of I feel funny using the word contracts. One of the areas we work in a lot of schools in Richmond, Virginia, they're doing some pre and post surveys of Source of Strength implementation, and they're looking at K through 12.
Oh, wow.
And they're tracking students K through 12.
Yeah.
And so that research obviously will take years, but we are so interested to see where that goes. When I'm training in a high school that also has Source of Strength in their middle school, that conversation is so rich.
Right. It just threads together. Let's be clear. So Sources of Strength is an evidence-based suicide prevention program. And when we're talking about prevention for my listeners out there, there's 3 different types of crisis interventions.
Yeah.
There's primary, secondary, and then preventative. So we're trying to get ahead of the problem so that way we don't have a problem.
Yeah. So we would say that Source of Strength is a specifically strength-based upstream suicide prevention program.
I love it.
And each one of those pieces is really important for understanding why we do what we do the way that we do it. For being a suicide prevention program, we don't spend a ton of time talking about suicide.
Right.
Because we're so focused on those strengths.
And we're going to get into that probably next.
We can.
Yeah.
We can.
Tell me about the wheel.
The wheel.
Tell me about the wheel.
So we do that through, and I mean, really like, the wheel is the bread and butter and like the backbone of what we do. But that's threaded through like play and connection and sharing. And you mentioned earlier that it's a peer-led program. That piece of our work is really important. It's not a top-down adult coming in and saying, this is what you do to be well. This is how you can get better. This is how you have to behave to make yourself achieve. Like it's none of that.
Right.
It's working to use that framework of the Sources Strength wheel to get to really what the root of what Sources is we're really just a storytelling program.
Yeah.
We help adults and peers tell stories of how they've used those 8 different protective factors that you've seen on the wheel to move through really tough times. And that's where the learning happens.
Yeah. And to me, it's super important because, you know, some of those manual training style programs that are out there, they're great. Like don't mistake my words, but like they're sort of like a one and done to where like when you've been through it and you've done it, that's it. Whereas it sounds like Sources of Strength is tying into the ever-changing cultural needs of generations. I mean, like, how long has this thing been around for?
More than 20 years.
Okay. So
more
it's
than 20 years.
Yeah. And it's fresher than ever, let's just say.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, and what you're speaking of, those sort of like one and done programs, they're so important.
They are, yes.
And a lot of them are really effective.
Yes.
You know, you walk into a room of 6th graders and you ask them, what are the risk factors and warning signs that someone might be struggling with suicidal ideation? Yeah. Even if you use those words to a 6th grader, like, ooh,
yeah.
ooh, ooh.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
You know,
because that stuff's really scary.
Right.
And it can be really alarming. And so people retain it. But that's important stuff.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of like intervening with someone in crisis. When you know those things and someone is in a mental health crisis moment, you know that's a red flag. The fire is smoking.
Yeah.
I need to get this person connected and to help most of the time. When you ask that same room of 6th graders, how does someone who's going through a really hard time get better? How does someone who's been bullied or abused or harassed move towards healing?
Yeah. It's a lot harder.
A lot of crickets.
Well, yeah, it's hard to have that conversation.
Well, and people don't know. And so that's why sources of strength, because it's about the culture, right?
Right.
And so we would say like, I don't know if we would say, some of the programs you're speaking to that are like sort of one and done, it's like almost like an inoculation, like, oh, everyone went through this training. Now we're well.
Yeah, we're all certified or cured, if you will.
Right.
But like the sources of strength wheel, I find it to be just overall wellness. And that is like the bread and butter for me. If anybody out there would spend time on this wheel and really look at what are your strengths and maybe what are the things that you need to kind of work on a little bit better, that you would have that stability to not want to take your own life.
Or the things you could consider using.
Yeah.
The wheel, so there's these 8 strengths, like so we should probably frame it first.
Yeah.
So the wheel is these 8 different protective factors that was built, talking to people all over the United States, Canada, Australia, First Nation communities, Manhattan, New York, talking to people who have gone through some really tough stuff and saying, how'd you get through that? Mm-hmm. The people, the places, the things represented on the wheel are what they shared with us. And those look really different for everyone based on our own identity, journey, personal story.
Sure.
And so sharing about the wheel in a group of students and broadening what those things look like can really help people understand how that could potentially be something that could help them. Because there are some pieces of the wheel that at face value for people are a hard pass.
Right.
Spirituality.
Yeah.
As an LGBTQ person, 5 years ago, I see spirituality being raised in a Catholic household. I'm like, nah.
Yeah. Not going back there.
That's not for me.
No.
It's not for me.
But you've redefined what spirituality can mean for you.
I don't even know for me, sure. Yeah. Source of strength highlights a broad definition, not even a broad definition, a real definition of what these strengths look like. And for each of us, that definition is really specific.
Right.
But my specific definition doesn't need to match what your specific definition is.
That's the cool thing about it. It's like, how can you and I relate on spirituality or learn from each other on spirituality without that that negative name calling, type thing?
Yeah.
It feels more organic.
Totally.
In a structured prevention program.
Right. And that shared language
Yeah.
around wellness and what helps me, we'll talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
And when you run into your big emotions, first name them to tame them. Maybe you've probably heard that in your work.
That's cute.
It's cute. Yeah.
Name them to tame them.
Then what helps you bring that emotion back down to size? And where is that on the wheel? Is it something you do? Is it someone you go to? Is it a way you move your body? Mm-hmm. And then connecting that to a shared language for youth and adults in a school can mean that every time a third grader comes to the math teacher and says, oh, I'm so mad, I want to explode. The math teacher doesn't just need to submit a referral.
Right.
They can say, what helps you with that big emotion? For me.
Yeah. No, it's.
What have you heard?
The infamous sticker, smiley, angry, sad chart that we see in schools is it's a good start for us, but the kid is slamming his hand on the angry face and he's like, I am mad. And you're like, okay, now what's next?
Yeah.
Now what do we do? He's telling us he's angry. What's our next step?
So our source of strength teams are it's like a practice ground of students from all different social networks in a school and community who are literally practicing coping strategies, practicing wellness, so they can then help their peers do the same or make suggestions or try new things, or when they run into an emotion that they've never felt before, have maybe heard a story from someone who's their peer who they trust,
right,
who has felt that emotion, and they go, oh, this whole bag of tricks I can try.
Well, and that's what's even, I don't want to say better, but to me, it's better that it's coming from the peers. Peers know peers best. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that is a critical piece of our evidence base, as well as a couple other suicide prevention programs. A peer-led model is a peer-led model of prevention is so critical.
Yeah.
Because it's not their teachers that they're Snapchatting or that they're talking to backstage after the show or after the big game about what to do that weekend.
Right.
So peers often know much sooner.
Oh yeah. I don't.
And someone's struggling.
Yeah. I don't want to get technical on my dates or the facts, but I believe definitely around middle school, your parents' perceptions of you and the adults' perception of you and your development are way less important than your peers in the sense that.
Say it again.
So in other words, the approval of your peers in middle school is way more important to kids than their parents or the other adults. Peer acceptance is so important. And what a great bridge for mental wellness to have other peers with tools to help other peers.
Yeah. And you know, I wonder, I would push back on the word tools. I would almost say they are like tapping into a culture that supports like discussing and like practicing wellness.
Yeah.
And something about the word tools to me feels like what we're not doing is training peer leaders to be junior psychologists.
Right.
What we are doing is working to break down some of those codes of secrecy and silence. And that's why Sources takes peer leadership and pairs it with the trust and care of adults.
Yeah.
In a school and community. So it's not something that's just for kids. And our model is not something that's just for kids. Like it is wellness for humans.
Yeah.
You know, when I run a full adult advisor training, you know, I'll say, and we're going to spend some time practicing our own wellness today. And then adults like, yeah, whatever. Like, what's the point? Like, what do I have to do tomorrow?
Right.
And then at the end of the day, they're like, oh, wow.
Like I've got some homework to do.
Thank you is more the message.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to say forced, we've invited them to practice wellness.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and you know, we'll do like all staff trainings where it's a full audience, like operations staff through sort of central office leadership. And we'll challenge them, you know, we talk about how we practice our wellness like before and after work. And it's also too often that we talk about how we practice our wellness before and after work. Like what's a pro tip? What do you do? What's a secret? Like, how do you practice your wellness during the workday?
Yeah.
Like what helps you when your emotions get big during fourth period?
Right.
And like do some
In the
sharing around
moment.
that. Yeah. Like what do you do? Our wellness as humans can't wait till later.
Right.
We've got to have strategies.
Yeah. Especially in like schools to where, I mean, teacher burnout or just fatigue or just having those rough moments. How can you manage that? You know, you can't wait till after work, you know? So this is a great bridge building among all people.
All people.
Yeah.
It's not tricks to cereal. It's not for kids.
No.
It's really for everyone.
So let's go over the whole wheel.
Yeah.
And then I want to break down sort of how it all bridges together.
So the wheel, 8 pieces.
Yeah.
It's hard to frame quickly. I will. Sort of the first 3 can be sort of simplified to people. So family support, positive friends, and mentors.
Yeah.
When we talk about family support, for lots of people, that's the family they were born into.
But not for all.
Not for everyone.
Yeah.
For lots of people, it's the people they were raised by, which is a more appropriate definition, even more specifically. And I'm saying specifically, not broadly, because it's more truth. I think that there's something about saying broaden that, like, I don't want to say diminishes, but I want to be more clear that, like, it's actually the honest definition, not the broad definition.
Right.
And there's specificity within. And for lots of folks, it's chosen family.
Yeah.
Right? The people who are not necessarily your blood relatives who show up for you time and time again. So we'll talk about family support in trainings, and there's so much goodness there. And also a lot of pain.
Yeah. That's a big slice.
It's a big slice.
But all the slices are the same.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
totally.
think so.
So that's just one real good foundational thing to get into.
When we talk about family support in trainings, it's not real often that I share a personal story, especially around family support, because my parents are still married. They were desperately supportive of me sort of throughout my entire upbringing. My mom volunteered in our elementary schools. My dad was president of our school board for like my entire high school career, which led to some interesting dynamics.
That sounds awesome though.
Yeah, it's a privilege in so many ways.
Yep.
And yet, because of the way our society exists and how fearful I was of who I was so hesitant to share my identity with my parents. So I like really refused to accept their support.
Yeah.
Which how shitty is that?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was 22 when I came out to my family, and my mom laughed at me. I'm like, no, that's not how this works. You're not supposed to.
Yeah, you're not supposed to make fun of me, Mom. But it was probably like that like giggle that people make when they're nervous, maybe. I don't know. I feel like I'm making up excuses for your mom.
She says to me, she's like, we've known since you were 4.
Okay.
And we gave your sister that Barbie kitchen, and you played with it more than she did. What she had to share.
Yeah.
And that's when I could finally see what they had always been trying to offer me.
Yeah.
Which was family support.
I do find that in society, maybe you'll agree or disagree, that like the good things that we have that like we're born into, or like that privilege, that there is some kind of,
I don't want to say shame, but this idea that like, oh, I can't really talk about my good upbringing or this good thing about me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think I could relate it specifically to this story.
Yeah.
Let me finish the full thread of it. So once my parents started laughing at me, and I was like, oh, this is a space I can potentially be myself. And now I see what I've always been so lucky to have there.
Yeah.
And we were digesting family support as a training team and kind of talking about how to clarify the definition of family support. And I said to one of my coworkers, I was like, ooh, I don't want to share my story of family support because in my community, like that is the one-off. Like that, I am so fortunate, so lucky. The last thing I want to do is brag. It felt like bragging about the family support that I was born into because that's a privilege that so many people in my community don't get to experience. So many LGBTQ people are not accepted by their family. So why? How could I get in front of a group of LGBTQ people and celebrate that? And my coworker said that gives people hope.
Yeah, that's a source of strength.
That gives people hope. And
right.
For someone like me who has a young person who seems to be exploring their gender identity and their queerness, to know that it might not always be bad, like that is something that is so hopeful for me as someone raising a family. And I hadn't ever seen it that way.
Right. Or even looked at it differently than bragging, like we would agree that that's a source of strength for you. It's such a big part that's kept you above ground and really pushed you to be authentic.
Yeah. I don't know. Yes, it's a big strength for me. I'm so lucky to have it.
Yeah.
The rest of the sort of journey, I found family support in other ways.
Right. Which is what I think is great when you started about this, talking about your maybe biological or born into family versus the family that you choose to have.
Yeah.
And again, like for most of us that have partners or spouses, like that's a part of the chosen family too. And your friends, like you talk about, meaningful friendships and mentors. I think one of the things that came up for me when I went through the sources of strength training was the idea of like mentors, maybe not even being involved directly with my life, but that they could still be considered mentors. Is that accurate?
Tell me what you're thinking of.
Well, like somebody that I would like aspire to be like, that maybe I don't know. I'm not saying celebrity, but maybe somebody of a stature that has made the same or similar journey that I want to get to, that could be considered a mentor. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think it would depend on who I'm talking to. To a room of adults?
Yeah.
I would say yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Mr. Rogers can be your mentor.
Right.
Barack Obama can be your mentor.
Right.
To a group of youth, I wonder if I would offer that because I think part of our program's focus, part of suicide prevention, part of wellness is youth-adult connectedness.
Yeah.
And so I wonder that my instinct would be I want the students to have a mentor or a trusted adult. We use that language interchangeably.
Yeah, more of like a tangible mentor.
Yeah.
Somebody that is within 6 degrees.
Yeah. Someone they can go to if they're worried about themselves.
Yeah.
Or a friend. I wonder, same with like in storybook, students and adults will talk about like sort of fictional mentors. I bet that conversation would look like, oh, what do you admire? What do you appreciate about that storybook character? And where do you see that practically represented in your community? I bet that's the way I would reflect that. Oh, Harry Potter's your mentor. Okay. Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because his Patronus is a stag. Okay, what does a stag represent to you? You like to hunt fish. That's a healthy activity. Okay.
See?
I don't know.
Yeah, you could tie it all back around.
I don't know what the thread is, but
yeah.
Yeah, so we got a little lost there in family support.
That's okay.
So we'll talk about family support, then we'll talk about positive friends.
Mm-hmm. You gotta have those. It's
helpful.
It is. Like I literally had someone who I thought was a friend a while ago tell me that the paintings that I was doing was not real painting.
Okay.
Like almost as if I was being a phony or like I wasn't really painting. And it still sticks with me because I'm like, I'm using paint, I'm using a brush, I'm using a canvas. I'm doing this out of my imagination. Like what about this is not real painting, but God, it hurt like for that to come from a friend.
Yeah.
So I think that positive friends and just loving your friends for doing good is really important.
Well, and that's why every time we talk about positive friends, our first question is, what are the traits and characteristics that you look for
in
positive friends? because that looks different for all of us based on what we need and maybe what our family support is or is not giving us. You know, for me, it's like, I want someone who's brutally honest
Okay. Yeah.
to a fault.
Yeah.
That really works for me.
Does it?
Feedback is a bit of a love language for myself.
Okay.
For other people, that sounds like I need someone who just accepts me no matter who or what I am.
Right.
I can be as outlandish as anything. You're like, yeah, I love that.
Well, I mean, to a part that's like being unhealthy, you know, like you don't want to support a friend that's making poor life choices. But if they're pursuing a passion or getting ahead, you know, they're finally finding their own path. It's like, just love them and be supportive.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes being a positive friend means telling your friend something you don't think is good for them.
True.
Right? Love your haircut, hate your boyfriend.
Right.
It's that sort of like angle.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we would agree on like being brutally honest is a good trait of a friend. A friend that can tell you.
Brutally might be specific to myself. Maybe others would just say kindly honest.
Kindly honest, brutally honest. It's all a word game. But at the end of the day, it's being honest, you know, and finding finding that special way for you to connect to your friend in an honest way is vital.
Something that always comes out of students and groups too is like some laughter, like fun, play,
right?
Which it is so quickly, middle school after? Like it is so quickly that laughter and play is like removed.
Yeah.
From
Sit
all
down
learning.
and be quiet.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the lack of play. And then in corporate spaces,
right?
Like there's like a wear your jeans on Friday or like every couple months there's a happy hour that's sort of awkward because your boss is drinking, you don't know what to do.
Right.
You know, like
leave. Leave. Can get ugly quickly.
Yeah. So like the play and positivity and laughter, that's such a critical piece in source of strength work.
Yeah.
And we hear it from students like, I want someone who just I have fun with.
Yeah. That's a coping skill.
With. Yeah.
It's a coping skill, folks. Play is a coping skill.
And it builds connection. And again, it looks different for all of us.
Right.
For me, playing is like feedback and collaboration. And I do play sports and like I like to get competitive. For other people, play is like painting on the same canvas.
Right.
Or like composing music together, you know, harmonizing.
Yeah.
Like play is just as...
But at the end of the day, play is collaboration, you know, like it takes more than one, you know, to kind of do that. So those are more like the human slices of the pie that you said, right? Is that how you phrase that?
I think I said people.
People. Yeah. That's like the people slices part.
Family support, positive friends, mentors. People. And then the next, I don't know if I trust our framing here on we don't frame them in 3 buckets. I am now. Then we would move into like the practices. So healthy activities, generosity, and spirituality.
Yeah.
These ones are 2 of the 3 are overlooked. Healthy activities. Everyone has healthy activities. People don't say, what are your healthy activities?
Right.
When you've got a source to strength team, they do. And it's a really great way for when schools are working to build belonging.
Yeah.
Which you probably know in like some suicide prevention work, like thwarted sense of belonging really highlights risk for suicide.
Yeah.
For people to share what their healthy activities are, if it's sports, music, video games, hunting and fishing, like spending time outdoors, napping.
Yes.
Like all of those things, naming them and then celebrating whatever the heck people's healthy activities are is so helpful.
Yeah. In my practice, like I sort of change healthy activities, or I wouldn't say change, but like hobbies. I always ask people, do you have a hobby?
Okay.
And when I hear that they don't, that's a huge source that you're not tapping into. Like a hobby to me is defined by something that you enjoy doing for the love of doing it.
Well, hobby feels antiquated.
Yeah.
You ask me my hobbies, I'm like, girl, I don't know.
Working out.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a hobby.
Really?
I wouldn't use the word hobby. But I mean, I'm 35. Like
Yeah.
You're not older than me that I'm aware of.
Yeah. We'll get into that later.
Hobbies feels antiquated. And not that healthy activities feels like cool.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just like having something that is fulfilling to you for the sake of doing it, like a real activity. Your hobby might be gluing puzzle pieces to a
It's
frame.
funny. When I hear hobbies, I'm like thinking of like
Knitting.
building toy cars.
Yeah, building
like
toy cars.
There's something very
Tinkering.
tactical about the word hobbies.
There is, it's definitely, at least for me, like the hobbies are mind altering. Like I can forget about anything else going on, laser focus in on the love and the passion for doing this activity. And it's a great release for me. So, and I just notice like a trend in that people that are experiencing mental distress sometimes don't have hobbies, and that's a great source that you can go to alleviate that and to build onto other things.
What's the better language?
I don't know.
Because when you say, and I'm not saying healthy activities is right. Like that's not my, it is my lean, but that also isn't like so what are your healthy activities?
Yeah.
That feels a little,
Yeah.
because I would put napping in healthy activities.
True. That wouldn't be a hobby. Like,
Or it's like you're really leaning in. It's like it is a hobby.
yeah. Man, I'm gotten so good at napping. You have no idea.
It's something I'm practicing.
Yeah. Well, maybe you are because,
I totally am.
Yeah. Like it wasn't until recently, because I'm older than you, that,
The truth is out.
yeah, that napping has actually become a part of my own mental wellness. Like,
It's such a good reset.
yeah, like you and I were talking earlier, like I literally will come into my office and take a nap on the couch for 20, 30 minutes if I'm feeling overwhelmed and just full, So yeah, I guess.
I do think there's something to delineate in healthy activities. And I wonder, we might do something tomorrow. I got to see the cognitive space that we're in, about like passive versus active healthy activities.
Right.
Like I think we need both.
Yeah.
As well as like interpersonal versus intrapersonal healthy activities.
That's a great way to look at it, because you're right. Like healthy activities or hobbies can be shared or done individually. It depends on your own need,
Totally.
like for me, like my painting and doing what I do is solo. That's like my space, man. I don't want your judgment. I don't want your, suggestions. It's just, I'm doing it for me, but
None of that.
yeah.
How did I frame it? Brutal feedback.
Yeah. Brutal feedback. I was like, ooh, ouch.
Brutally honest. Yeah, brutally honest. I won't be. Painting looks great.
Yeah, sure.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Okay, so healthy activities, we share on those, and that can be just such a nice way to normalize it. Like whatever you're into, it's not harmful to another person.
Boom.
We love it.
We do.
Love it. So then, generosity and spirituality, we sort of put in that practices bucket. I wonder. Generosity is probably the least familiar.
Right.
People are like, what?
Yeah.
Why that?
Well, like even on the first podcast that I put out, it was talking about just doing random acts of kindness and how helpful that is for your own mental health. Like, don't think that those people aren't getting something out of it. And it's that generosity component. It's compassion for the human experience.
That's what you think it is?
Generosity?
Tell me more.
I would say that would be how I would look at generosity, is just compassion for the human experience.
Okay. I wonder, let's talk about this. How have you tapped into generosity? How do you tap into generosity? Do you tap into generosity?
Yeah, I think I tap into it professionally, I do it by practicing empathy. Yeah. I mean, as a person that could have done anything that I wanted to do, I chose to devote my life and career to people.
Maybe you're too generous with your time. Going back to the conversation.
Well, yeah, I feel weird sometimes looking at it from a business perspective, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But just there's another part of this that I think people are better givers than they are receivers. And part of that comes into that generosity thing. It's something that's ingrained into us that, like,
give it to me again, but don't say givers and receivers. In my community, that doesn't work.
Yeah. Who would have thought you would have gone there? To me, it's like, if I give you like a gift when you leave today, like you might say thank you very much, but you don't have to do that. You really shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I can afford this. I can pay this. And then at some point I feel bad for offering you something out of generosity.
Okay.
Whereas all you had to say was thank you.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be nice and give you something as a token of you coming in and spending time with me.
Yeah. People are not, personally, I am not great like about receiving compliments.
Right.
Oof.
Yeah.
It's hard.
You see? So that's where I think it's something in us. I don't know what it is, but we're better givers.
Do you know Joyner's theory on suicide? Suicide. I want to say the right name of it. Let me Google it, because I think this could be thoughtful. Yeah.
And I'll edit this part out.
Oh, is that right? I thought you were going to just keep it.
But but we're going to go to Casa for dinner if you don't mind. It's a Mexican restaurant. Do you like Mexican?
Oh, yeah. Okay. You had sent me not Mexican. Yeah, I love Mexican.
No, I sent you, I think docs, but my wife is like, I'm starving.
Yeah, Joyner's theory of suicidality.
No. What is it?
I would want to have a napkin or a piece of paper to write it on. They say that, I won't speak well to it. This is what I could speak to. I mentioned earlier, like, thwarted sense of belongingness.
Yeah.
Like that is, he says that there are three sort of pieces that are present that put someone at increased risk for suicide. One, thwarted sense of belongingness. I think that sort of
totally buy into that.
Yeah.
Well, that's even part of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
It's belonging.
Yes.
We are social creatures, people. There's no way to get around that.
Yes. So the third is capability for suicide, or you see like work around like means prevention.
Yeah.
Preventing people from having access to means by which they could die by suicide.
Okay.
So that's like a lot of.
It sounds more of like a primary, secondary sort of. I mean, aside from the belonging part, like the means to it, that sounds more secondary, primary to me.
I won't speak to the exact factoid, but there's something around when someone decides they want to die by suicide, like it typically happens within like it's a short term. So like having access to means.
Yes.
But then the second piece there is perceived burdensomeness, like the perception that you are a burden on others. Gosh. And when people have perceived burdensomeness based on no fault of their own, so often based on the reason I didn't connect with my family as a youngster, for example, because of society and the structures with which we exist, that as folks are hoping to, maybe that's the wrong wording. One way to help people move away from a perception of burdensomeness is tapping into generosity.
Yeah.
And offering people small or big ways to be generous to others. It can reframe and reshape their brain.
Love it.
And show them that they have the capacity the words there, huh? Show them they have the capacity? No, I don't know what I want.
Well, that there's value in their life, that they have not only something to offer, but something to take. And
but it's not even about to offer. Yeah, like that they can help someone else.
Right.
Like that can just reframe their capacity for
absolutely
sort of who they can be and how they can exist. And it can work to heal.
Both.
From,
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the right word. Is it like outwardly would be a kind of a simpler way of saying it, you know, kind of open up yourself and.
Yeah, I wonder what you're looking for there. Yeah, like
sharing and caring. It works.
Can be fun.
It can be fun.
Yeah, so folks who have been through some really tough stuff, who have just been taught and made to feel like you make everything worse.
Right.
When you can offer them, or you have a group of students and adults who are like offering ways to be generous to other people, it can show people, it can reframe the way they see their existence.
Well, yeah. And, you know, thinking about the other slices that we were talking about earlier, like generosity can compensate and counter maybe some of those deficits or challenges in those other slices.
Totally.
That's that, like, it's a great equal thing or it's a great plus thing.
Yeah.
Like generosity plus family supports or generosity plus mentors. It equals wellness.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that like generosity is the great equalizer. I would say it's overlooked.
It's one of them. Yeah.
What I would say is that, you know, the point of the source of strength wheel is it's not like you are meant to have all of these things.
No. And like, I wanted you to explain them first before I kind of got into the notion that it's not equal slices for you to have all of them all at the same time. Yeah. Sometimes it's a little of this, sometimes it's a little of that. It's just recognizing that these are the foundations, right?
Well, and what we'll ask students in a training is, you know, do you think any one piece of the wheel alone would be enough to keep a suicidal person safe?
No,
of course not.
Right.
But we want to mobilize as many strengths as we can. You know, you think of it like
prevention.
Yeah. It's like that in PE and like grade school, and they would pull out that parachute, and the whole room was like, wow.
Right.
Get the ball. Just do this. If you're trying to keep the ball up with just one piece of the wheel, it's not enough. If you can get 2, 3, 4, then it's gonna be a lot easier to keep those balls moving.
There you go.
Keep them moving.
Well, which is all about balance, you know. It's I find so often that like we're taught traditionally just to be linear, like get to this goal, get to that goal, get to this goal, get to that goal. But do we ever circle back to the first goal and like do maintenance or check in on that again? Like, I mean, for some of us adults, when's the last time we did a sit up or a push-up other than PE gym class. There's some out there.
Well, for me, it was about
Not
2
you.
hours ago.
Yeah, for you, it's 2 hours ago. But like, I know for me, it's like I haven't done gym in a long time and my body's feeling it. And I need to regroup and get back on track with that. Just because you do need to balance everything. I'm under stress for other reasons, but we won't get into that, So what other slices?
Yeah, we didn't get there yet. So spirituality's next.
Yeah.
And spirituality is one that some people have such a clear sense of how they tap into that and are so, it's interesting. Often people are really proud to say like where and how they practice spirituality.
Yeah.
Oftentimes people sit back a little bit. And I wonder if that's a bit of what we were talking about earlier with, I don't know, do we use the word privilege? I would rather not.
Did, but we don't have to.
Yeah, maybe let's not anymore.
Yeah. I don't like the word, to be honest with you.
Was sort of bragging.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and I definitely notice this in spirituality, sometimes when the spirituality, and specifically for these folks, religion, that people practice is the dominant culture, they are unsure often how to share about that.
Absolutely.
Because some spiritualities and some religions infringe on people's dignity. In some really clear ways.
Yeah. That's why I think that's been a big area for me to redefine of like religion is scary to me. Spirituality is even scarier.
Tell me more.
So spirituality is just acknowledging that you're in it and that you're not in control of it.
Okay.
In some way. So you have to let go. And that's scary to do.
So
but
for you, does spirituality tie into a higher power?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's more of a higher power, but not like, again, like I feel like you and I do a good job of like debunking words. Like the word power bothers me. I'm not saying a higher power in the essence of being over controlling of me, but that I can let it go. It's sort of like the weather, like I explain to my clients a lot of the times when they're dealing with anxiety, and a lot of anxiety deals with fear over the unknown and that you can't control what's going to happen.
Okay.
And I want to acknowledge that with them and let them know straight up, you cannot control the weather. You can't. That's out of your control. It might thunderstorm today. What are you going to do? What can you do? And they have a good answer. What is that? Stay inside or wear a raincoat, get an umbrella, or just embrace the rain, go out there and get wet.
Okay.
So I think that's more of where I look at spirituality in that sense of it is a higher power, but not in the traditional sense of a higher power. It's being able to let go of some things to say, geez, I mean, one of the questions that I was going to ask you, I don't think we were going to get to it in another podcast, and not to switch gears, so don't let me get too off topic.
I want to go back to that weather thing, but go there first.
Well, this is kind of part, but like how often do you cry, would you say?
I hate the question. Next question, please.
No, you got to answer it. Once a year, once a month. Like, what are we looking at here?
Sadness. So when
No. I didn't say sadness.
I'm going to answer your question.
Okay.
When we talk about like emotions in like a source of strength space, we talk about like the big three emotions: anger, anxiety, and sadness.
Okay.
Anger, I run into pretty rarely. I know how to deal with it because I practiced it.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety, I run into clinically as well as often.
Mm-hmm.
And I also know how to take care of it. Sadness is one that I'm really not used to. Who knows the reason why?
Yeah.
In the past couple of months, sadness has been rearing its sweet little head a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I try to fix it with journaling, which is how I fix my anger.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. I try and fix it with exercise, which is how I fix my anxiety.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. I try and fix it with like conversations with like friends and coworkers.
Sure.
Still doesn't work.
Okay.
And I realized that for my sadness, one thing I need to do is just fucking cry.
Right. Right.
And I'm so not into it.
Yeah. See, that's a big thing. How often do you think I cry?
Well, I didn't answer yet.
I know, because I think you're still you still think that I'm associating crying with sadness, and I'm not.
Or you think I've lost track of the question.
Right. I asked you how often do you cry?
And I'm getting there.
And you went right to sadness.
And so, okay. I don't cry much.
Okay.
Outside of the past 3 months, in which I cry every other week.
Okay.
Which I would say is probably not much.
And over the last 3 weeks, just we're not going to get too far into it,
Sure.
but it was over it was a sad situation.
Yes, I went through a breakup.
All right. I'm looking at, have you ever had tears of sadness? Or no, I'm sorry. Tears of joy.
Yeah.
Sorry. Tears of joy are a different thing.
Probably twice in my life.
In your whole life.
Whole life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that I really think people we need to change that stigma.
Around crying.
That's
great.
I would love to do a whole podcast on crying because there is such
Let's cry.
Dude, I cry, I'm not kidding you, once a week. And it is very few because of sadness.
Yeah.
It's tears of joy.
Yeah.
And it is amazing.
Oh, let's flip that narrative.
Yes.
Yes. I have coworkers who cry in every other conference call and they're not sad.
Right.
They're not sad, but the
Yeah.
narrative around tears, the
It's
connotation
crazy.
for me right
Yeah.
there is
Oh yeah, it equals sadness, or
Yeah, it's
there's this
sadness.
male shame thing to it.
Yeah.
But like if you ever see a man cry, oh my God, it tears the room apart. They
Yeah.
just melt. But usually again, that's associated with a sad situation and not like a father that's proud that their kid just hit a home run
Yeah.
or that they are just happy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
but
that's so. And I think it ties right back to your weather analogy.
Mm-hmm.
That's so great. And that for me, I want to take that analogy and package it broader than spirituality.
Sure.
Like when your storm system.
Yeah. When it's out of your control, it's like, you know, there's a great quote about sailing in the ocean, kind of the same idea of, you know, the whole boat metaphor. You know, you can't control it. You just, and that's for people that boat. I don't know how to drive a boat. You and I would have to have a license to boat or take
Well,
a
I
boat
grew up
safety
in
course,
Michigan.
but-
In middle school, they make you get those.
Do they?
I have a boater's license.
You can take me out then because I don't have any license.
They don't do that in Ohio.
No,
Michigan is in fact better. Is that what I'm hearing?
maybe in boating. People would argue in football or whatever, but you and I don't entertain any of that.
Not me.
But like, it's just being able to let go of control is so difficult, particularly with spirituality. And there's this book I read a long time ago about control. And like, if you want to give control, or if you want to control someone, to really control someone, you give it up and you allow them to be in control of something. Like I work with teachers and I'll say, you know, you want them to do this assignment, right? That's your end goal. So allow them to decide where they do the assignment, whether they use a pencil or a pen or a crayon, whether they do it backwards, maybe from the bottom to the top, you know, I mean, give up some control is how you gain control, you know, but again, that's a whole nother.
Yeah, I could go there and I'm not gonna.
Thank you.
Say what you said about
the weather.
Yeah, would you say that again?
Yeah, sure. So imagine that it's snowing, you know, like a full on.
No, would you tie it directly
snowstorm.
to spirituality? It was so clear to me the first time you said it.
Well, yeah, it's about giving up control
Yeah.
to where when it's raining outside, you can't control that.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
But what you can control.
But what you can control is whether you stay inside, whether you wear a rain jacket, whether you wear an umbrella, or you just go out there in the rain. You know, like one of the most funnest times of my life was when I was a kid and it was raining. I was camping. I don't know how much you feel about camping, but we were at this pond.
He doesn't like it.
Yeah. And my dad hands me a bar of soap and I'm like out there washing myself up in this pond and it's pouring down rain. And I'm like, what a weird, surreal, once in a lifetime experience.
I feel like that is that's cool camping thing.
Yeah.
That like just get wet in the rain. I feel like that's such a what do I want to say?
Timmy, my goal for you is to go camping, to realize that the best part of camping, what do you think the best part of camping is?
Just getting wet in the rain.
Yeah, and coming home to your to all the things that you have.
Sure.
It's for a short period of time to, you know, the whole unplug thing, but to like not have power, to not have a comfy bed, a little bit of sacrifice for yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I hear that.
You know?
I hear that. Just get wet in the rain. Is that what you said? Say it again.
Yeah, just to get wet in the rain.
Yeah, just get wet in the rain. That is such a better way to say like it's okay to not be okay.
Absolutely.
It feels so much more practical. It's so much more applicable. And I think it's really like, sometimes I'll say like, sometimes you just swipe left on the day.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, today is just not going to happen for me, you know, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like sometimes when it's raining, like, well, it's going to be fucking wet today.
Right. And again, the other side is like those rainy days. I mean, I was really worried that the podcast today wasn't going to happen because our power was going to go out and the rain would have ruined.
That rain happened.
It
for a
totally
minute.
did. I mean, it was flooding bad. But what else does the rain do?
Flowers.
Yeah.
Sunshine.
Right. Growth, trees. We need to learn to live with it.
Yeah. I want you to repackage that above to the whole wheel, not spirituality.
Sure.
That's your homework.
Yeah.
Last two pieces of the wheel.
Let's do it. Then let's go get some dinner.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I love Mexican.
I eat it twice a week.
Being a gluten-free guy, it works out really well for me.
You're going to love this place.
Great. Thanks. Last two pieces of the wheel, mental health and physical health. And those are intentionally next to each other, right? We know that they're directly related. You know, we'll offer to students, like, you ever cry really hard and like you've got a headache next day or really worried about something and it shows up in places like your tummy or your armpits, you know, we We know physiological health
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, they call it like somatic symptoms.
Yeah, thanks for the...
That's like the clinical word where,
Yeah.
Kids, I mean, it's not a wonder on test day that the nurse's office is full of tummy aches. Like, that's obvious.
And it's not a wonder that in the districts that have means, they're giving breakfast to their kids
There you go.
on the day of standardized testing.
Yes.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Beautiful.
So we find that humans, I wanted to say, because again, like it's not kids, it's humans. For like physical health, folks tend to understand like, preventative, like routine, and then like emergency. Preventative, like eating well, routine, like doctor's appointments, emergency, I've broken my ankle.
Right.
Got it, tend to have it.
Yeah.
With mental health, same gig, right? We've got preventative ways we care for our mental health.
Yeah.
We've got routine ways we can care for our mental health.
Yes.
And then there's this like code of secrecy and silence with mental health with kids.
Yes.
Is it and adults?
Yeah, for sure. And I have this, I wouldn't say it's a funny way of putting it, but like
go.
like physical health and mental health are treated differently.
Yeah.
Like what I mean is the example of like if you're experiencing anxiety, I could say suck it up and get going.
Sure.
Work it out. But that's not the same way as it would be with like a physical ailment. You
Right.
know, like if your arm is broken,
Right.
I wouldn't say to you suck it up and get better.
Right.
So the way that they're treated is very much so differently.
Right. And that creates these codes of secrecy and silence that are really dangerous
Very much so.
amongst humans, especially youth.
Yeah.
And that's why we empower peer voice in source of strength trainings, in meetings, as well as in sort of cultural change. Nothing in a source of strength space is top down like you must do. There is no deadline for the assignment. There is no
Right.
sort of metric that we're trying to drive. The metric we're trying to drive is like changing the norm and the narrative around what wellness looks like.
Yeah.
And if wellness for you today needs to look like you're playing video games in the corner on your cell phone
Yeah.
because you got something going on, like, yes,
Yeah.
that's a healthy activity. Do we like healthy activities? Yeah, we do.
Yeah, keep it going. And it's so interactive and so fun. I mean, the games that you guys have created, I have to say, hands down, would apply to any age, any group of people.
Yeah.
They're awesome. So
I'm excited to play some with you.
yeah, so kudos to you for contributing to those.
Thanks.
So what would you say are the three phrases or the three words that sort of wrap up sources of
Oh,
strength?
3 words. What? No, it's a 6-hour training.
Well, I understand that, but isn't there hope?
Oh, yeah. Hope. Well, and so that's sort of, you'll have to put this somewhere else in the podcast.
Yeah.
In the prevention field, there's 3 sort of narratives that we work to flip the script on.
Mm-hmm.
The first we've talked about, right? Switching from adult driven to peer led.
Yeah.
Right, rather than training a group of adults
Adults
to
to do
identify folks and make the appropriate mental health referrals,
Right.
training the peers. The second, so much suicide prevention is sad images, shocking statistics, and traumatic death stories, and that can be really dangerous.
Yeah, horrible.
Yeah.
One of the school districts that I was in had someone come in and speak about suicide prevention in that frame, and it stirred up a hornet's nest.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of traumatized, re-traumatized, vicarious traumatized, new traumatized kids that the approach was so important for school districts out there. Let me just say, if you're going to address suicide prevention, do your research and choose a program that fits that.
That avoids some of those
avoids
scare
that.
tactics.
Yes.
That can create like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then when someone goes through a really tough time, they're like, oh shit,
Right.
what's going to happen to me next? And I don't mean to make light of that. But so instead, we focus on hopeful stories that are also helpful and talk about these strengths and normalize help seeking. So hope and strength is critical in all of our messaging. And it's not that like Pollyanna positivity, like, yeah,
Right.
chin up, things are great. Like we recognize that folks will go through tough times.
Yeah.
And it's flipping that narrative around. How do you move through that tough time? What are the strengths? Who are the people? What are the practices that you tap into that help you make that emotion 10% bigger? Right. So focusing on hope and help and strength. So people have like this Rolodex of options that they've learned from their peers in a language they understand that they can consider tapping into, or they know who the trusted adults are in their school or community when they don't know what else to consider.
Well, absolutely. I mean, in sort of wrapping this up, I like to talk to people about this fact of What are the odds of you being born?
I don't. You'll have to educate me.
It's 1 in 400 billion
Okay.
for you to be born. So you can't tell me that you're not special or that you don't have something to offer. You're literally greater than any lottery pool. You as a person are 1 in 400 billion. So you can't tell me that you don't have something to offer. And the Sources of Strength wheel is a great source to sort of start to discover that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You want to end on that?
I'm going to leave it there.
All right, buddy.
Wish I had something sweeter.
Nah, you're sweet enough.
Thanks.
Till next time.
By the way, at the Wellness Project, we have merchandise. That's right, all mental health awareness themed products. We've got artwork, we've got shirts, we've got hats, we've got candles. Who doesn't love a good, nice, smelling, fragrancy, cozy candle, right? There's going to be more candles coming. I'm trying to do like a mental health awareness line of candles. So we're going to have one for like anxiety awareness, depression awareness, wellness awareness, which is actually out right now. That's right. You can get your own wellness awareness candle. What does it smell like, right? You have to come in and check it out. But if you hit me up on Facebook, or you can email me and I can give you that information. And thank you for your support.
I fall asleep under the trees. I follow where the current leads. Whispers in the woods, they call to me. Listen as the wind awakes the leaves.